Hello and welcome everybody to the Unstitched. Is it the Unstitched Pod? Am I doing the thing again?
You're doing what I do every time.
Yeah. All right, welcome everybody back to Unstitched Pod. Thank you for again Unstitched with us. Today we're talking about some big things. What are we talking about, Hannah?
We are talking about copyright and all of the gray that comes with that.
Yeah, you can hear by Hannah's voice, she's super tired because we actually just finished recording the whole thing and we're doing the intro at the very end. And she's like, we're doing the whole thing. It's so much, too much.
We have so much more we could talk about. We can make a whole other episode on this.
Sketchy subject matter and lots of gray areas.
Oh, and we are your hosts. We didn't do that part.
Oh yeah, we are your hosts, Vika.
And Hannah.
Welcome back, everybody. We're back.
We're back. We're going to try it.
I'll match some.
We're going to podcast weekly. Here is, we're putting it out in the universe. You hold us accountable. We're doing this. We're going to record every
Thursday.
We're going to actually do it, you guys.
Are we?
Yeah.
Do you have faith in us? So much faith.
I do.
That sounds like a song. Anyway, yeah, enjoy the episode. Let's get into this episode. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being here.
We're so excited.
Today's episode is going to be extremely fantastic and very educational, but we do have to warn you that we are no experts in the topics that we'll be bringing up. We're just relaying information that we have gotten from trusted by us sources and such. And the topic of today's conversation mostly is
copyright. Yeah.
Copyright. Let's talk about it.
There's a new trend on TikTok right now where people sit in a room together, usually family or friends, and they say, "We listen and we don't judge." Have you seen this trend yet on TikTok?
No.
And so then people,
what's it about
it's
exactly?
hilarious because then like parents will sit down with their kid and they'll say, "We listen and we don't judge." And then the kid will be like the classic one that I've seen so many times is like, "You know, when I was younger and you told me to like wash the dishes or like clean my room. And when I was younger, if I had dirty dishes in my room or if there was something I just didn't want to wash, I just threw it away." And then they all go. And so then the parents react and then the kids, and then they all say together, "We listen and we don't judge." Anyway, that trend is literally playing in my head as we talk about copyright because I feel like this is a tough conversation for lots of people to hear.
Sure.
Especially because fan art is a thing, you know, like it is a huge subculture. And in embroidery, specifically in anime, Disney characters, like beloved characters, there's so many thriving artists out there who like their whole brand is recreating somebody else's art. And so I know this is kind of going to be a tough conversation.
Like where do they stand when it comes to copyright and trademark and all these different laws that protect intellectual property? Yeah, for sure. And I think like obviously for most people, this might not be extremely applicable, but this is information that is kind of blurred in the community and like even worldwide because obviously we abide by different laws in different countries. Some of them can be similar. Actually, copyright laws are fairly similar worldwide-ish, and there's even like a convention that I'm going to bring up later as well that connects a lot of countries together. Yeah, we'll bring that up later. We're going to ruffle some feathers, right? With this topic.
Again, this is coming from us saying we listen and we don't judge. So just because we're talking about it doesn't mean we're judging you. There are some incredible artistic things happening in the like hand sewing embroidery makerspace. We just want to make sure that you are aware that you could be violating some copyright laws and we want to make sure that you are protected. So
yeah,
we're coming to this from a place of love and caring. And also you do whatever you want to do. We are not telling you what to do. We're just simply making sure that you are aware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll share some information that we have and, you know, you make your decisions, whatever works for you.
Yeah. In the United States, there's like an actual copyright office based in DC. And that's like their whole job is to be a place where people can report copyright infringement, where they can register for copyright, and where you can learn about copyright. So
Is that copyright.gov or something?
Copyright.gov, yeah. And essentially, the whole reason why it exists is because obviously we want to protect original artwork. So the whole reason why copyright is a thing is because you, as a creator of something, if you are the original artist, then you have the right to tell other people whether or not they can copy your work. You don't have to register your original artwork, but you can if you want to make the process easier down the line. And it just helps kind of like mark a specific date and have a paper trail to prove that you are the owner.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier if someone infringes on your copyright later on. But the nice thing about it in general in the US is if you are the original artist, you don't need to register it. It's just like an added bonus if you do.
Yeah, people do take advantage of the fact that most people will opt out of registering because you have like the price ranges between like $45 and $500 per artwork, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like embroidery artists pull out these PDF patterns once a week, you know, things like that. There's no way anybody can really justify the amount of money that you would have to give to the US Copyright Office to register each of those. But as far as I understand, like you can register after somebody has stolen your stuff, copied it, you know, used it for whatever purpose.
For registering, it looks like electronic filing where it's a single author and one piece of work. It's $45 to file and $65 for a standard application. If you want to file via paper, it's $125. So that's good to know. Oh, but if you want to register a correction, it's $100.
A correction?
That's interesting.
What does that mean?
Like if you made a mistake in your original registration, it's $100 to fix it.
Goodness me.
I know.
Yeah. All right.
So it costs $45 per item or per piece of artwork if you want to file every single time in the United States.
As far as I'm aware, it protects you from infringements in the country. So if you were to register your artwork with the US Copyright Office, they would only be able to protect it on the US soil, let's call it.
Yes.
If somebody is saying like in the UK has stolen it, then the US Copyright Office can't do anything. You have to go other routes. But yeah, in the UK, it works slightly different. We don't have an office, as far as I'm aware, that takes care of registrations, things like that. Copyright law is automatically given to you if you are the copyright owner. And obviously there's a question of who comes first. Like if somebody's stolen your work, like a lawsuit or something like that, then you would have to give some kind of proof of ownership. You know, this could be metadata of if it's a digital piece, like say if it's a photograph or if it's a piece of digital artwork, something like that. Most files will hold metadata inside of them. Typically metadata will include dates of creation, the IP address of, you know, computer or whatever, things like that. So there's ways to do it if it's something to do with digital stuff. If it's a painting, you know, again, you'd have to go other routes. But there's no such office in the UK as in the US that will register your works and give you like a piece of paper. Although there is another service that I wanted to bring that up. I don't know if Hannah, you know about it. It's called Protect My Work. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. If you go on protectmywork.com, it's a very insightful website. And the service that they offer is basically certification of copyright works for a very small price. It's not necessarily like a super legal thing. They're not like a governmental agency or anything like that. They're a private company, but they give you some kind of certification. It's called SHA-256 file hash code certification. Whatever that means. It's some kind of certification that is respected by, I don't know who, but like say somebody stole your PDF pattern or your photos from your listing, whatever you're selling. That will be enough to file a copyright infringement claim and to prove that, hey, my work is actually registered with these people. And it's very rarely that it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, it's providing a very thorough paper trail, which is like the main thing that you need on your side. Yeah. So, and honestly, it doesn't even cost that much.
No, so you pay like $50 per year.
Yeah.
And you get given 5 tokens that you can use each token on an individual artwork. But the way that it works, actually, you can give them zip files. So say I made a PDF pattern. I want to protect the PDF itself. I want to protect the photos that come on the listing. I want to protect the title, potentially maybe some videos, some promotional videos that I've made. And you can zip that into a file, basically use one token to protect the whole thing. And then you can buy other like a separate tokens for like $1 on top of that. So it's very cheap and it gives you certification. And I want to share an experience because I've actually recently had my first ever time when somebody stole my shit.
Ah, no.
Yeah, so this girl, Hoop in Hand, have you heard of her? She's from down south. Hoop in Hand.
No.
Yeah, she's super awesome. So I'm literally sitting in a cafe last Sunday, getting ready to go watch pantomime performance, very British thing. Fucking love it. And I get a message from her with a link to some Chinese knockoff website that is selling a kit of my advent calendar pattern, which I never made a kit. And they're using, like, they've even put my videos from Instagram on the listing. I've not seen that done before. So they use my photos, they use my videos, they didn't use any of my text, and they were selling like a kit of it. And I was like, oh, holy shit. And she was like, don't panic. I deal with this all the time. And then she literally walked me through what the hell to do. She has this doc. Okay, this document that she's put together. And I'm more than happy to share that with whoever wants it. So she has a whole massive list of these websites that are knockoff websites that are known to steal copyright information. And depending on who those websites are hosted by, so for example, one of the big hosts is Shoplaza, and then there's Shopify. Actually, like all of these websites that are hosts to very simple kind of e-commerce websites, they will have some sort of way to report copyright infringement, and then
within their own,
and then they'll take it down. Yeah. In this doc, she has all the information with regards to how to report it, what to say, what to include, for the best outcome. I mean, I followed every single thing that she told me to do, and it got taken down like within 2 days, basically.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, super cool. I would have not known what the hell to do or how. Yeah, she even has like insights on how to find out who the website is hosted by, so that you can go directly to them and report on, because you have to, find. And sometimes they hide who it's hosted by. And so there's tricks that you can do to find out who it is hosted by. It's super freaking cool. I mean, I didn't really care that much about my pattern being stolen because it's going to become very irrelevant very quickly because it's an advent pattern.
Yeah, it's only
yeah, exactly. So I didn't panic too much.
But if you were to let it slide, that could indicate to those people, oh, we could do it again. She didn't say anything last time.
Oh my gosh, there's another...
And that could be tricky.
True, yeah. There's another funny story. I just saw on Instagram literally this morning. There's a girl I follow. She makes apparel. She'll like embroider and print on apparel, like her own designs and things like that. And she got an email from somebody saying, hey, I ordered on the 2nd of December and it's still not arrived. Like, what are they waiting for? I've emailed the company that I ordered it from. It's your design, so can you like tell them what's going on? Like,
oh no.
And she was like, yeah, first time that I'm held responsible for somebody stealing my work and reselling it. Ugh, that is so disgusting. But yeah, shit like that is more like, it happens all the time. Like all of these websites, like I have a massive list. There's probably like 30 different websites that are known to do this, and there's probably like hundreds more, and I didn't even know that they exist. You know what I mean? Like I don't go on them. It's nuts.
Well, and like as a consumer who isn't in the art world, like how are they to know that someone isn't like the website isn't wholesaling from an artist, like
true.
I mean, obviously, if you are in the art world and like our number one recommendation always, I feel like we say it all the time, just buy from the artists themselves. But like regular average day-to-day consumers don't always know to do that because wholesaling is a pretty common thing. But when it comes to digital works, that isn't normally the case.
You know what you have to do? That's what I do. Whenever I come across a deal that's like kind of too good to be true, you just put the name of the website into Google, and right next to it is a scam with a question mark. And there's always going to be like a Reddit post or some reviews.com page. And if you can't find any reviews whatsoever, it is a scam. Come on.
Oh my God, that's so true. There's the whole world of AI too that's like a whole nother layer, which we can talk about later. But also that's another one. It's like, especially an average consumer, they don't always know to like do the research before they buy, and they're like, oh, this pattern's $2. And
yeah,
it's frustrating. It happens everywhere. But
yeah,
anyway,
for sure.
all that to say, when buying, just do your due diligence, because yes, it might look like a really great deal, but it could end up just you wasting your money and then not actually supporting the artist.
Or not getting what you paid for. But yeah, let's go back into copyright itself. So I know there's going to be this massive question in people's minds with regards to personal use.
Yeah.
The reality is that copyright applies no matter what use you are intending it for. So if you copy somebody's work and you're like, oh, I'm just going to make it for myself, like I'm going to embroider this pattern or, whatever on my tote bag, I'm not going to sell it, whatever. Maybe I'm going to gift it. Maybe I'm not going to gift it. It's totally fine, right? No, it is not. Copyright law protects the intellectual property owners of any kind of use outside of their permission, whether it is personal, whether it is commercial. Obviously, commercial is a lot more dangerous because that is taking away potential income from the copyright owner. Personal use, not so much because it's just a one-time thing. But then again, how many one-time things can you afford to lose? Let's say if there's like 1,000 people that just steal it and use it for themselves instead of purchasing it, that's 1,000 sales that they've lost on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. The only thing about that, though, is especially for like bigger corporations, let's say Disney, for example, there's only so much that they have time for, or for, people who have been hired. And Disney's a major corporation. They do have tons of people that's like their full-time job, but they're probably not going to crack down on somebody for just making something for personal use because they have more.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And that is the gray area, right? Like nobody's really going to go after you if you just put whatever design on your tote bag. Nobody, like, you can sit tight, but just know that technically you are breaking the law,
And I think that's kind of the thing. It's like, well, if I don't get in trouble for it, I'm fine. And it's like, well, actually, no, you could be in it could be a big problem. And also, like, as the other caveat to that, especially if it's another small business owner or like an artist, especially someone that maybe you see their art online and you like love it so much. I see this in Facebook embroidery pages specifically all the time, where someone like takes a screenshot of something that they've seen. They're like, I love this art. Does anybody know how they drew this? And then people in the comments will be like, why don't you check out the original? Like, why don't you ask the artist if you can make, or like see if you can buy a pattern or something? I love that about the hand embroidery world on Facebook specifically. Like, people are really good about cracking down on that kind of behavior and calling people out. And like admins and Facebook groups will say like, hey, that's a little sketchy. Don't do that. It's kind of nice that that's like a thing now that people
I wonder if that's
but
new, because that is not my experience. Every single time there's a question of copyright somewhere on Facebook in these embroidery groups, it's like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do it, whatever. And if I make 5, like, whatever.
I think it's because I've left all of those groups. So I'm talking specifically, like, there is one by, I want to say her name is Jessica Divine. It's like Art of Embroidery. I hope I'm saying her last name right. I know her first name is Jessica. And she's so good about cracking down on stuff. And then Modern Hand Embroidery is also and I think people have just gotten really good at calling it out. But like the part of the whole reason why I was mentioning that is it always boggles my mind when someone posts that and doesn't even think about how that makes the artist feel. Like, for someone who's not Disney, like when you're actually just like, oh, I loved this artwork so much, I made a copy, but like I'm not going to sell it. I just wanted to make it myself. It feels icky. Like, always. It always feels icky. And like, you might not be infringing on their copyright if you're like,
well, you are technically,
unless that artist wants to take you.
They're not going to come after you.
Right. But unless that artist is going to they're not going to take you to court over that, but they could, which is nice to know. But
they totally
could.
But
overall, it's just like not a good practice. Like, it doesn't feel good to have somebody do that, It's the same as if you had someone who like copied exactly the way that you looked and dressed and like pretended to be you for a day. It just feels, it's weird. It's a weird thing to do.
Yeah, there's so many different, like, there's the other argument to be had, right? Like, when it comes to copying Like, what if I'm copying only 70% and then I'm adding my own little finishing touches?
Oh, yes.
What if I am changing it slightly? What if I use different colors? Like all of that stuff. And that is when it is useful to have some kind of certification of your copyright, especially like, again, in the US, because if you do want to go after somebody for infringing on your intellectual property, you will need to have registered for the, to have this big piece of paper. But that's pretty much only when it comes to lawsuits. You don't necessarily need to have that to take websites down and listings down, things like that. Right. Generally, you don't. But yeah, the question of how much of this, like a concept, is being copied, that is always the question when it comes to when there's a lawsuit, they will crack down on like so much stuff. Look into like patenting. So if you patent something, there's a very specific process that you go through. Not that I've gone through it, but as far as I'm aware, there's a very, very specific process. And even if there is a different patent that's already been in place and yours, say, is 50% similar, they're never gonna let you patent whatever it is. You have to make sure that it's under a specific percentage, and typically, as far as I'm aware, it's a very low percentage of overlapping with existing patents, things like that. And I think it is very similar when it comes to copyright. It's the general concept, it's the idea. It's not necessarily anything to do with colors or, adding some extra lines and things like that. It's a completely different thing. Yeah, I don't necessarily know how to explain that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you maybe explain it better?
Yeah, as long as like the base, whatever the base like imagery is, if it's like at the core, super similar. That's
I think there's gray areas, right? It's not an easy topic.
No, and I think it's a super uncomfortable thing because as artists, there's that argument of, well, what even is really original anywhere?
Right.
Anyway,
right.
Art is always inspired by other art, and like there's that whole steal like an artist. What's that? Copy like an artist. Do you know the book I'm talking about?
I've got that book.
Steal like an artist.
The great book.
Yeah, and obviously, like the educational argument is, how are you ever going to learn that technique or that style if you don't copy, right? Like for art, for paintings, for example, we teach painters how to mimic or copy art in order to learn that style. So there is like useful elements to that. And that's why there's such like a gray area, and why I think we've gotten to where we are today, specifically in the embroidery world, where so many artists, I think, just like, well, it's fine, because I still put in the work to stitch it. I still put in the work to make my design version of it. So I am fine. And I think we've become very entitled because of the fact that we are able to share in an instant, because we like to share our creativity, and because we love other art forms, right? Like we love TV, we love movie characters. We want to like share that love with others. And, fan bases are huge when it comes to art. Of course, we want like art to display on the wall to say, this is like my favorite TV show, or this is my favorite character. And it blurs this line
inspired
of like,
by and copy.
Yes, versus copy.
Yeah, there's so many gray areas. So many gray areas.
Yeah, most of us want to give each other the benefit of the doubt when it comes to seeing somebody copy your work. And I think we've both experienced it. I've had to have really uncomfortable conversations, and I've talked about it really openly on social media before about when someone has copied my work. And the argument always is, well, it's not exactly the same, and they might have stitched things slightly different, or they did X, Y, Z different, so it's not a copy. And then I'll have to say, well, actually, it's so similar to, like, clearly they took what I did, they tried to make a version of it and then shared it as their own original idea and thought. And it is a very gray zone and normally what ends up happening is, if I see something, I know that person follows me, they've engaged in my content before, they've asked me questions about my process before, then they post something that looks very similar to my work. I always try and have a conversation with them privately like, hey, this piece that you recently shared made me a little bit uncomfortable because of X, Y, Z. And I don't know if that was your intention, but I just wanted you to be aware of how that made me feel. And 9 times out of 10, that person's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that it would make you feel uncomfortable. It was inspired by your work. I can take it down or something like that. And I'll just be like, no, it's like just for future reference, like try and find your own voice. You know, I've had a couple instances where someone will be like, well, your thoughts aren't even your own and you don't know what you're talking about. And art is and I stitch it with my own hands and like you didn't design it at all. And then I will say, and I recommend this to anybody who's on social media, especially if you're on social media as an artist sharing your original artwork, then I'll just say, you are free to do what you want to do. I'm not planning on taking legal action, which is usually why I usually say something like, I'm a small artist. It's going to cost a ridiculous amount of money for me to take you to court kind of thing. And then I just say, but for my peace of mind, I'm just going to block you.
Yeah.
And I put in writing, I would really love it if you would not continue to copy my work, just so that there's like a little paper trail. And I won't say in the message, like, I'm not going to sue you. I won't ever put that in writing, but I do say something like, clearly you don't want to stop. So like, I'm just going to protect my peace
and take that away from you.
Not allow you to have access to me anymore.
Yeah. To be fair, that sounds like a really good, chain of actions that you've taken, from having a kind conversation to getting nowhere with it and then just putting a stop to it. I love it. That's really good.
Yeah. It's a tough thing to do and it's super uncomfortable, but I do think it's important for artists to realize, like, yes, by sharing your artwork online, you are opening yourself up to someone copying. You aren't going to know unless someone takes pictures and shares them on social media and somehow you get your eyes on it or someone else tells you. You would never know, right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of the scary part about the free, quote unquote, advertisement of using social media platforms, right? Because like we're willingly putting our stuff out there.
Yeah.
And it could be copied. We don't know.
Yeah.
So like that's the dangerous part about it. But the hope is that people wouldn't, that they would have a moral compass. That they would choose to not.
Yeah, I mean, humans have been known to exploit like legal loopholes and things like that, especially when the law has so many different gray areas. I keep saying gray areas. It's not pretty. I'm not imagining it pretty.
Yeah. And then how many changes do you have to make to an idea that you see from someone else for it to truly be your own? That's the other argument is like, I stitched it in a different colorway. And I did it in this instead of...
the argument with like, I did this with my hand, with my own hand. That's not an argument against copyright whatsoever, because copyright only protects intellectual property. It doesn't protect anything physical at all. It protects the design. It protects the idea. It protects the logo. It protects, I don't know, like so many different things. Nothing physical. It's intellectual, like whatever came out of your brain, whatever you've been able to create with your ideas, whether it is a mashup of different ideas that you've heard somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's not been done before knowingly by somebody else in the world, then it is classed as an original idea. And it's a fair argument when it comes to there's no original ideas these days. Well, it's fair and it isn't, in my opinion, because you're right. Like, we get inspiration from all of these different things. And if anybody's interested in learning more about that kind of stuff, Hannah, you mentioned the book Steal Like an Artist. I do recommend it. It is a very good book to learn about.
It's a very thought-provoking book.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does encourage you to steal from people, but it's not the stealing that you think. It's not copying. It's not like that. It is more so, and I hear this advice all the time, like how to be original in your niche. You watch content and look at other people in different niches, and then you just implement that shit in your own niche. Like, I don't know, let's come up with an example. Give me some kind of niche, something.
Printmaking.
Okay. Well, there's different types. Which one?
Yeah. Where they carve, what is that called?
Oh, like linocut printing?
Yes.
All right, gotcha. Okay, so linocut printing can be done on, like, traditionally on paper, right? Actually, traditionally it came from wood, right? Like, it's wood carving and printing. And then lino, and then there's other things like there's Jello, there's rubber, like, you know, the erasers. People have done that
Like
with
erasers. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
I
see,
know, yeah.
that's the thing. Like, you have the idea. What's the original idea? You carve something out of hard-ish material, and then you put ink on it, and then you print that, obviously, on whatever you want. You can experiment, like, wood carving for, you know, wood carve printing, I don't know, whatever it's called. And then there's Leinica, and then there's eraser. There's probably other things that people carve and then print. And it's all different. It's not necessarily the same thing, right? And how did that happen?
Right.
Like, somebody just thought, oh, I can implement the wood carving thing, but actually I'm not going to carve it on wood. I'm going to carve it on lino or on whatever. That's how it works. Like, it's the chain reaction, right? And you're not necessarily like doing the same thing, although you are, but you're using different things to do it. And then over time and over this original idea might turn into like 1,000 of different ideas, you know?
Yeah.
How did people create stencil art, you know, for like graffiti and things like that? How did that happen? I don't know. Did, you know, the vinyl printing, like cutout print, did that come from stencil art? Because that's literally the same thing. But you don't use it in the same way, you know what I mean? So everything is interconnected, really. You can just use something for some other purpose, and that's going to be original because nobody else has done that before you. Let's go back to the actual copyright. There's some things that are kind of important to know. We mentioned the US and also the UK. So there's such thing that you can look into. It's called the Berne Convention. And I don't know necessarily when that happened, but I think it was like in the 50s or something like that. There's 179 countries that have signed the agreement of the Berne Convention. And basically what that means is that each country out of all these 179, US and the UK being part of it on the list, they agreed to respect each other's copyright law. So copyright law in the UK is a little bit different to the US. And then I create something being in the UK, I'm protected by the UK copyright law. That means that whoever is in the US who wants to copy, you know, basically infringe, they cannot. They have to abide by the UK law. UK copyright law.
Yeah, regardless of where they are.
Regardless of where they are, yeah. And there's 179. How many total countries do we have? Like, what, 280? Something like that? I actually don't know.
Yeah.
Let me Google it. Oh, 195, actually. It's not even 200.
Oh.
So that's like 90% of countries in the world.
That's pretty good.
Have to, technically. And actually on this resource website, protectmywork.com, you can find a full list of all of these countries. China is one of them, by the way. Basically, there's a high chance that you are protected worldwide just based on this Berne Convention, and you can use that. If some Chinese website is stealing your shit and you're trying to report them, you can always mention the Berne Convention because there are like more agreements in place as well. This resource is very good. Definitely familiarize yourself. If you're an artist, like, this stuff is going to be important for sure. Oh, and
great resource.
Just a little thing like people might not know, but the way the copyright was born, the copyright idea, that was like originally in 1710, so like 300 years ago. Some dude was like, actually, it looks like, you know, I don't want anybody to do this thing that I do. How about we bring that to, you know, to court and make something happen? And then based off of that, there've been like other acts, local, you know, to some countries. And then the convention is the most recent thing, this Berne Convention, I believe. But your copyright lasts, depending on the nature of your work, between 15 and 70 years. So it doesn't protect you forever. That's like one thing to note. And we should mention, what's it called? Free domain? No, what is it called? Public domain.
Yeah.
Public domain.
Public domain, yeah.
That's another thing, right? Because
that's a whole other thing.
I think that's because the reason why it is so easy for regular people to think, oh, I can copy this, whatever it is because we have examples all around us that is being copied. We just don't necessarily think that, oh, that's a legal copy. For example, anything before the copyright law was invented is public domain, which means that it can be copied, it can be reproduced commercially, used for personal use. It doesn't matter. Literally nobody owns copyright, and you cannot own it either. Nobody can own it ever, but public owns it. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. Yeah. That's why you go into these like galleries and they're selling all these postcards and journals with all these artworks of famous paint.
Like Van Gogh.
Yeah, Van Gogh. That's a big one. That's a big one.
Starry Night.
Yeah, exactly.
Like big, Mona Lisa.
Yeah. they're basically making money on that. They don't license anything. They just snapped a picture, did some edits, whatever, and they put down the postcard, and then they're selling it. And they can legally, you can do that, and you can search public domain for shit ton of stuff, like not just paintings and things like that. There's books, there's fonts, like it's a whole business. Like people will go and digitize all these different old books that they find, and there's like some interesting fonts, and then they'll create fonts and sell those fonts. You can do that. You can legally do that.
Yeah. Which is why we see a lot of recreations of original artwork from long ago. And those are fine. Like we see, how many times have you seen Starry Night done
embroidery. Yeah, many times.
Embroidery, paint, like you see it everywhere. It's just like a thing,
Poor Van Gogh. Didn't make any money on that.
That is one of the things. Yeah. And that's one of the things that people will argue if like you call them out for copying you, like, well, it's fine, like how many times have you seen Starry Night be recreated, like, and you're not that big artist. And it's like they completely fail to understand the fact that
they probably just don't have the information. That's the whole thing, is like, where do you learn that shit? If you come across it, you'll learn it, but then you don't go out of your way to be like, oh, I wonder how copyright works. I wonder what public domain means. Somebody mentioned it. Like, you're not really gonna pay that much attention to it if it's not relevant. So it's understandable in a way, but like it is silly for people to make assumptions when it comes to other people's intellectual property.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part, like any big brand that is like, so Walt Disney's artwork, for example, or anything created by Disney, or like based off of other artwork, cartoons, for example, those kinds of things. It's like, well, that's this big corporation. Like, they don't care. What do they expect? Like, oh, they don't think anybody's gonna make their stuff. So then like they use that as an excuse. Well, it's fine. Because like, I'm not hurting anybody is often the like excuse when it's like a big thing like that. Right. And that's like used as a way to kind of like to try and defend recreating that artwork. But the copyright doesn't care.
Yeah, it's like printing your own money, right? Like the money heist thing. Like I'm not stealing it from anybody. I'm just printing extra for me.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of argument.
So, yeah. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this today is because we've seen it before where we kind of watch other artists, especially if you are a maker on Etsy. Etsy is pretty good about cracking down on stuff, but people will be like, how can I wordsmith this so that it won't get taken down off of Etsy for copyright infringement?
let's talk about Harry Potter, right? The Harry Potter, like as soon as you put HP anywhere, like that's it. They're not even going to let you publish it. But if you put wizard is not a trademark. It's just a word, right? But when I say wizard, do you not think about Harry Potter? Of course you fucking do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's that big. So people do this mashup of different words. I mean, there's so many.
And it's to specifically get around copyright. And they do it and it's like, it's fine. I'm not hurting anybody. And it's like, you're right. You are not hurting anybody. But the reason why we are concerned as fellow artists is because we don't want you to get dinged by hefty fees and lawsuits. Like for me, I'm like, oh, I don't want that to happen to you. Like, why even go there if like there's a slight chance that you could get sued for creating something? I think that's one of the reasons why both of us, we stay away from artwork by other people. Like, I try and stay away from characters.
Well, we should mention that as well, like style. So there's an argument to be had against style. So it's not the same thing, but it's similar. It's done in the similar style. Where do you go from there? And that is that. For an artist, because actually I'm going to share this experience. There's an artist, I'm pretty sure just digital and, prints and things like that, painting. So the style of artwork that I do, take away embroidery, like the actual artwork, intellectual property, is called, well, one of the names would be called color blocking. So blocks of color.
That's what I always associate.
Actually, it comes from, funny enough, like lino cut and wood printing, wood carved printing.
Yeah.
And it's very simple thing, right? Anybody who doesn't know, just Google color blocking. You'll see what I mean. And it's a specific style. You just create shapes and you fill them with color and you put them together to create a picture, right? Whatever the hell it might be. It doesn't matter what it is. That's the style. And when I first started to create this type of artwork, because I was really like fascinated by the whole idea, because I love color, and that's what it was. It's fairly simple to learn how to do, like lots of practice, and you get the hang of it. But there was another artist who was so like I wouldn't say famous, but like internet famous, maybe. People know it and people recognize their work. But a lot of the times people will misunderstand their work with their style of work. And people would literally comment on my stuff and be like, you stole that from so-and-so. And I'd be like, well, what did I steal? The style? Do they own the style? Right. And funny enough, like I never actually looked up, like I knew of them, but I never looked, because there's more than just them. There's actually, I could pinpoint probably like 6 to 7 people who are like really big in the art world, in the digital art world, who do the exact same style, just like slightly differently. And it's not just them, but they're like the most famous, as far as I'm aware anyway. Yeah, people will be like, you should give them credit or something. And I'm like, well, I didn't. I'm just doing the same style. There's nothing that I've stolen whatsoever. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's a difficult thing for people to understand. Like if somebody suddenly becomes known for something that they do, people tend to attribute the style to the person, to the creator, rather than individual artworks. That is a problem, because I didn't deserve to be called out, and there was no reason for them to be like, what are you doing? I was not stealing anything whatsoever, not even close. But I do remember that artist making a post online, and that was like the last time that I followed them. I was like, okay, I'm done. But and I don't know that it was based off of people calling me out, because they would tag them all the time, things like that. And bear in mind, I had like 2,000 followers at that point. You know what I mean? I'm a nobody. But they made a post and they were like, yeah, I don't own the style, but it's still annoying. It's like, how about you like get together in a room with like 6 other people who do your style and potentially do better than you? Are you going to tell that to them? You know what I mean? Yeah. Very unfair sometimes. And it is, again, the bloody gray areas, right? The style, nobody owns a style unless you patent it, which you cannot, because it has to be very specific. Yeah, it's those things. Some of them are frustrating.
I've said the same thing about fabric collage. So, I mean, we've both experienced it. I've experienced it from the other end, where people will tag me and be like, this looks a lot like
your work,
Hannah's work or something. And I'll be like, nope. It's just fabric collage, guys. It's just a fabric collage landscape. It's not. Nope. It's not. Yeah. Just because they cut up fabric layers and laid them down like a landscape does not mean that they are copying me. Now, if they stitch everything on every single layer in the exact same way that I did, that makes me feel uncomfortable. And usually that's what I do. I'll end up sharing, like, here are 10 other artists. Here are 10 other accounts that you can see. Our artwork looks super different. We're in the same medium, but it all looks different. We are not copying one another. It's the same thing. Now, here's the thing that I think puts alarm bells up in my head that I think we should talk about is when someone uses another artist's original artwork as reference point for making something else. The main one that comes to mind, please, nobody come at me.
I'm intrigued.
But I think Studio Ghibli is one of the biggest ones that gets stolen all the time. And if you're not sure, it is like a whole...
Oh, it's the creators
animated works. Yes.
Right. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, tell me more.
And the studio was founded in the 1980s, and it's a series of very iconic characters, movies by Miyazaki. I think it's,
yeah.
But oh my God, in the embroidery world, I see it all the time where someone will like copy characters from like Howl's Moving Castle, for example. So like the fire sprites, or trying to think of other characters that I've seen a lot of.
Spirited Away is a big one.
Yes. And those characters are then taken and done in embroidery or in other styles. And people get really, really defensive when someone says like, and they'll usually they'll say this is inspired by, or this is from, and again, it happens with anime all the time also, where people have entire accounts dedicated to not just making, but selling finished pieces of those characters. They don't seem to understand that that is like crazy major copyright infringement. There are accounts that are dedicated to just that one art form, or like one style, or like one character.
Yeah, I know, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, for sure, I agree. It's an interesting one to bring up actually, because I'm not a fan of anime that much. But I understand it's massive, just a massive niche. But I have sort of conflicting feelings about these accounts that do that, because, okay, so I'll explain how I feel. So first of all, anime world is massive, right? Again. Second of all, everything comes down to like how many fans there are, which there are a lot more fans than, I mean, maybe it's like on the same as Disney level, you know what I mean? Of anime. Yeah. Nobody like say who's responsible for merch, who sells merch for anime and for say Studio Ghibli, all of their characters and their storylines, whatever, because they must have some kind of merch situation going on, right? Never in their, like, they're never gonna make embroidery, you know, especially handmade embroidery for these characters, things like that. So it's a what is it called? Like a gimmick. So it's like a one-of-a-kind type thing. And yes, I understand totally that, you know, it does infringe on their copyright. But I honestly think this is where like people take the risk, right? They're never gonna go after you because they'll never recreate your thing. You're not necessarily taking away money from them. And that would be like the reason why would you go after somebody is because they're taking away your income. In this case, they're never going to do it because you're not taking away income from them, because they're never going to create those embroideries, things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The reason why I bring up Studio Ghibli in particular is because 2 days ago, they came out with a statement saying that they are going to start taking action against copyright infringement.
No way. They did?
Yeah. And I think it's because it's the kind of conversation that we're having right now. I think it's finally getting to them. So they said in their most recent, in the statement, they said, we have confirmed that there are currently some cases in some stores and online shops where images and paintings have been taken without permission from books and other publications published by our company, framed, etc., and are being sold at extremely inflated prices. Then it says, we promise to take strict measures both in civil and criminal terms. Our works and the characters that appear in them were all created and released into the world by many people with a lot of time and effort and have been loved by many people around the world for many years. And then they said, Studio Ghibli has described the infringement as a free ride on our works and characters.
Fair. That is super fair.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring it up is because I think it's because they haven't been pretty vocal.
Yeah,
they haven't pursued a lot of lawsuit stuff so far. And so that's why so many artists are like, well, it's been fine. It's fine. Like, I haven't gotten a slap on the wrist. Etsy hasn't been flagging me. So, like, I'm just going to keep doing this. And my argument is, but you are literally oftentimes people will take a screenshot or something from a still of that movie, and then they'll trace it. Then they'll make artwork where they'll stitch it over that. But that is someone else's original artwork. But because it's part of this huge fandom and because people love it so much, it's like, well, I wanted to create this to share my love about these characters. Behind it. And my argument is, I love that. I love that so much. I love the idea of having Little Fire Sprite on my wall. I love that because those characters are like my childhood. However, you should ask for permission first, because even if your intent behind it is, I just want to put it on it's to share the love of this artist. Yeah, but you're not paying the artist. You didn't ask for permission from that artist, even if it's this huge studio, even if the original artist is freaking 83 years old. You have legally, there are rules, and they're finally going to start cracking down. And I think they are kind of setting the precedent for other anime companies. I think other studios will be following suit.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I love that for them, actually.
I do too. I mean, and I think the part that's hard about that is like, there are so many people who, like, fandoms are so huge, right? People have loves that feel so deep for these characters and for these storylines, and that they get so entangled with that love that they kind of disregard the fact that they are breaking the law.
I wonder if they're just gonna, because in the statement that you mentioned, they said it's not fair that they sell that kind of stuff at inflated prices.
Yeah.
I think that's what they have beef with potentially, is that somebody is making shit load of money on this.
Yeah.
But also they're taking away the ability for like regular people to purchase it, in the way for like not inflated prices.
Yeah, well, and
that's very interesting.
In one of the articles, they were talking about this, that for every piece of officially licensed merch from Studio Ghibli, there's over double the number of knockoff pieces using official artwork from the studio. And so that's like the big concern is like,
so they are taking money away.
Yeah. And then it said, meanwhile, fan art and original fan merch are still acceptable, meaning that Etsy stores are safe, is kind of what they've said. But it's such a gray line for me. And again, I think fan art in general is like a whole niche world of like...
Yeah, fan art is different, isn't it? How do you categorize it?
I guess if specifically talking to listeners, if you are someone who creates fan art, I'm super curious how you navigate that, because I stay clear away from it purposefully because I'm terrified of copyright infringement and because I want to create original art. But if you sell fan art specifically, like what's your ruling moral compass? Like how do you make decisions on what you are creating and what you are selling?
That's a good question.
Do you feel like it's copyright infringement? Because I think the part that for me is like, if you are, I get that you've put work, and it's the same thing we were talking about earlier. I get that you put work into physically making the thing and that you took the time to make the thing, but the artwork itself was someone else's artwork. And if you are profiting off of that, I have a hard time understanding
how you justify it.
Yeah. And like, I'm genuinely curious, again, we listen and we don't judge. Like, I try really hard not to judge, because the other part is I have developed wonderful friendships with these other artists, so many of them, and that's like their whole platform, like their whole platform is stitching incredible pieces, like thread painting, like you would not believe, of these iconic artists. And many of them don't sell them. And again, I don't know if that means then it's just fan art. Like I don't understand how fine of a line it is and how people classify themselves as just fan art versus merch.
You know what I feel like would be a good thing to implement is just licensing.
Yeah.
Like if they made licensing affordable, let's say that way, then both the people, because I imagine the type of person who has so much skill to do these thread paintings of these characters, and they don't want to do anything else. They just want to do these characters because that's what inspires them. That's what makes them tick. That's all they want to do. And I understand the desire to make some money off of that. Like, of course, like it is. After all, it is the finished product that you do sell and you put work into that. I totally understand that. But again, the question here is like intellectual property, right? I don't imagine that, say there is this account that only does Studio Ghibli stuff and they're completely in love with it and they're amazing at what they do. And then suddenly Studio Ghibli is like, no, you can't do that anymore. Otherwise, we're going to, sue you for every piece.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Like, what if that's the only thing that inspires their art? What are they going to do? Do it in quiet and like not share their work? I don't like, I feel like affordable licensing would make everything.
Oh, totally. I agree.
Would make the whole difference. They would be able to make money. They would be able to share that money. You know what I mean? They'd be validated. It's a very interesting topic when it comes to fan art. And I completely get the inspiration and, the desire to do this. And especially if you do it well, you know what I mean? People adore it. It would be a crime not to share. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't want to dissuade somebody from doing that, especially if that's a niche in and of itself,
yeah.
I did quickly look up is fan art copyright infringement, because I was just curious if there was anything. And
what does it say?
It says derivative works are subject to the same copyright laws as original artwork. Generally speaking, copyright laws protect original works of authorship, such as novels, paintings, songs. But then it says for fan art to fall under the fair use exception, it must meet all 4 of the following criteria. 1, it must be transformative, meaning that it adds something new or different than the original work. 2, it can't be used for commercial purposes. That makes sense. 3, it can't negatively impact the market. That also makes a lot of sense. And
The
then
whole point.
4, it must be created for a limited and non-exclusive audience. So, I mean, it makes sense.
There's some
but
interpretation to be had there, huh?
yeah. The last one is one that I think it says if a small group only sees your fan art of people, it's more likely to be considered fair use. However, if your fan art is widely distributed or seen by many people, it's likely to be considered fair use.
Yeah, like who decides on those numbers? What's the number differentiator? Is it 20,000 people?
Yeah.
Is it 200,000 people? What is the number? Very interesting topic. Definitely go get educated on that as much as you can, just to be safe. If you're an artist, if you're one who maybe some of these things that we brought up, this is the first time you're hearing about it. There's a lot more that we're definitely not going to touch on because it's all a lot already.
Yeah.
And we've been recording for over an hour at this point. And we did want to talk about other things.
Yeah, I think this is also just a topic that like has so many layers to it, and it is such a massive thing. And like we didn't even really touch like, you know, we mentioned Disney a few times, but like they crack down super hard on stuff.
Yeah, Disney is very controversial because there's known cases of them stealing work from
Other artists.
Yeah. And then claiming
but then
as
they
their
turn
own.
around. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, real fucked.
And we have wanted to talk about this topic for a really long time, but we've kind of stayed away from it because we know it's controversial, because we know that there are people who listen to this podcast and like they only make fan art. You know, I just want to be very, very clear. This is, again, I was joking earlier, but in all seriousness, we are not judging anybody for making fan art, for making things that could kind of toe the line between fan art and...
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned, there's so many gray areas, right? Like you navigate them the way that you want to navigate them. If you're, you know, it's none of our business. You know,
Yes.
it's none of anybody's business apart from the copyright owner, of course. But yeah, you make the decision for yourself. Like, you know, our whole point was honestly, like based on my personal experience and conversations with regards to copyright, under the impression that people don't really know what they're talking about, you know, and they just go by what they think is accepted, potentially based on false information, things like that. So honestly, like the biggest takeaway here is like go do some research, potentially, if that is interesting to you, that is applicable to you. The more you know, the safer you are.
Yeah. And if you are someone who makes like your whole platform, your whole small business is based on creating artwork based on somebody else's artwork, maybe look into licensing or getting permission just to cover your bases, because I would hate for you to get a huge slap on the wrist. Like right now, Studio Ghibli is saying like we're not really gonna care so much about, you know, like sellers on Etsy, but making that statement that they made 2 days ago and moving forward with that, I think does have implications for maybe further action happening down the line, and that could impact you. And if this is how you make a living, it's something to be highly aware of, if that is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Also, seriously, very interested in your thoughts on this, especially if you are someone who makes fan art. Shoot us an email or message us on social media, because we really are very curious to hear your thoughts on this, because it's a big topic.
Amazing.
We could have a whole nother episode on this.
Yeah, probably. Let's do our segments that we forgot to do in the last few episodes. Yeah, in a long time. Okay, we're gonna do two segments. Da 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 da. What is the song for the segments? You're the singer in our
Did I
duet.
make a jingle? Did I make a jingle a long time ago?
I think you make
remember.
it. Yeah, I think you did. Do you want to do it again or no jingle this time?
I don't remember any of my jingles. It's too early in the morning for me to do jingles, Mika, but
it's always going to be too early now.
So what I'm saying is by next Thursday,
you're going to have a jingle? Okay, I'll hold you accountable.
I'll have jingles.
All right, we'll just do a clap. Welcome to our episodely segment called My Favorite DMC Color. No. It's not even. What is it even called? Yeah, so we both picked a DMC thread color from their 500 colors to feature in this episode, and then we'll talk each about those colors and why we picked them.
Yeah.
Okay, you go first.
I decided to pick a brown because I don't lean towards browns a ton. This is a brown that I use, oddly enough, circle back to what we were talking about kind of in my color blocking pieces where I do like seed stitch or something over the same color. This is my favorite brown, and we slightly disagreed on which brown was better because I picked number 838, but you like
is 9. That what you call it?
838.
Okay, there's another conversation to be had before we get into the differences. Do you really, that's what you say? 838? 938?
Yeah.
It's 838. It's 938. It's not 838. It's 838.
Okay.
Okay, tell me, what would you call 3853? 3853?
No.
725. What would you call 725?
Probably.
That is wrong.
Oh.
It's singles. Singles. You don't say it's 739. You say 739.
Okay.
Well, I say.
I'm learning something new. I didn't know there was a correct way.
There probably isn't. In
DMC
my head,
colors. Everybody, for the record.
Okay, 838. 838. Oh,
but
goodness me,
to
that's
me,
also wrong.
this brown is like the most, in my opinion. It's such a neutral brown. Like it doesn't really lean too yellow or too gray. Like I just think it's just a good solid brown. It's like to me, it's like a good hot chocolate brown, gingerbread brown. Like it's just a good brown. I highly enjoy it.
It's not saturated enough for me. It's like the dark brown.
You love saturated colors.
Yeah.
You gobble them
Duh.
up.
No, 838 is fine. It's just, it's unremarkable to me. Sorry to say. My
Who
personal
knew?
opinion here.
Those are fighting words.
Okay, that's one of the polls. My color is 340. See, that is so weird. Why am I saying it like that? It's 340.
Ooh.
Yeah, see, that's too long. That's too long. That's why. 340. 341. I guess I do say it like that.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
Making rules
I just,
and then
like,
going
bit my
against
own.
them.
Yep. Dug myself a hole right there. Yeah,
Okay,
I
what
picked
was-
340.
340.
340. Yeah, 340. Shut up. Yeah, it's kind of like a blue purple, blue violet.
It's
violet
like
blue.
a almost periwinkle kind of color, but it leans more
yeah,
purple, I
it
feel
is.
like.
Yeah, it is. It's like literally in between purple and blue, and it's very light. It's like between lavender and blue, and I love it. I love that it's super saturated, but it's not invasive. Recently, I've been loving that color. That color, I would say, I have envelopes that I ship stick and stitch packs in, and that's the color of my envelopes, 340.
I feel like my color is like the person who always greets you with a hug. I feel like your color
Disagree.
is the person who, when they walk in a room, is just super calming. But they're
calming?
like, but they like
I would say
attract
that
you.
they're super loud.
Really? Oh, I think it's like everybody notices when that person walks in, but they're like, there's something about them that's like feels very like at peace to me.
Yeah, and yours is like sitting in the corner sipping coffee the same color as
Yeah,
them.
mine's the person who like I want to go and like talk to them because they just look so cozy and comfy and they seem like a good homebody.
Well, who's to say that they would welcome you? Because they're like, I'm so cozy all by myself. I don't need nobody else.
I'm gonna
I
be a
always shit
little
on your colors.
controversial
I'm
here.
sorry.
I think
I'm
our
sorry.
colors would be friends. What?
That's like the opposites attract theory.
I think so.
Probably.
I think they need each
Probably.
other.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And then let's do the last segment, our second segment is we like to give shout outs to some of our favorite people in the community. I'm sorry we haven't done shout outs in a while. It's just kind of been
Crazy.
the last few times we recorded. So yeah, we would like to give a shout out. Well, two shout outs, one from me and one from Hannah. My shout out is Beatrice from EM Bayroidery. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering it. It's EM_BEY_ROIDERY. We'll leave it in the show notes if you want to actually go and check them out. Beatrice is incredible.
Oh my God, so incredible.
Actually, funny enough, we mentioned her in this episode. I'm sure she won't mind me sharing this info, but first time that we connected, that was years ago, she was very much one of those people who would create Disney patterns and have them constantly taken down. And I remember her talking about it, that she's very inspired by these things, and people ask her for these things, and she loved doing them, but it was just not sustainable because all of her listings kept just being taken down after a short amount of time. And I remember talking to her about it, and like she was very honest and vulnerable about it, and I honestly love what she's done to her
Oh my
work
God,
and to
same.
her account and to her whole thing ever since then. She did say goodbye to some Disney themes, and she switched focus to other incredible things that she now makes. And every single thing that she makes, I absolutely love, and people love it. She is amazing. Definitely go check her out. Go follow her.
She is one of those people that I don't know how she does it all. And I know people probably say that about us too sometimes, but in regards to like original, beautiful, original downloadable
She's
patterns.
amazing. I love her stuff. They're so pleasing to look at.
They are so clean, like visually.
Clean, yes.
And her photography is
impeccable.
Also so stunning.
Top notch.
And
Agreed.
like, also, I feel like it's a very fine line. She walks incredibly well of something that has a lot of like patterns that have a lot of visual stuff going for it, but it doesn't look super busy. It's not like overwhelming. It's her stuff. And
she's amazing.
Yeah. And like, I think we've talked about this before when we've done shoutouts, is like when you're scrolling and like you automatically know who that artist is. She has developed this style now where her patterns are so recognizable.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I love it. I so love what she's done to, her whole existence on the internet. I absolutely love it. It's like my favorite story to tell, honestly. Like I mention her to people all the time.
Yeah.
She just turned it around from, being bombarded by these, takedowns and stuff like that. She just turned it around and made something incredibly beautiful and original and honestly adorable.
Yeah.
Who's your shout out?
My shout out, it's interesting. We're both kind of we've been talking about copyright stuff and we've talked about Disney, and both of them are ones who love Disney. I'm just putting that together. But mine is Kenzie.
Oh, that's funny.
Kenzie Jones, I want to say is her last name. And she is Neverland.Knots on Instagram. I fell in love with Kenzie's work pretty shortly after I started posting on Instagram specifically, and connected with her. And she is one of those mixed media embroidery artists that I always recognize her artwork. I love how clean, simple, yet effective her artwork is. She's just really honed in on her craft, which is mixing watercolor with stitching. And she is such a Disney fan. She loves going to Disney. She loves creating Mickey ears. She actually made me a pair of Mickey ears that I wore when I went to Disneyland a couple years ago that are incredible. Like her craftsmanship is so good, but I do think she toes the line so well of like not infringing on copyright, but still that it's Disney inspired. That her stuff is so magical. Like to me, when I look at her artwork, and I love a good sparkle, and she uses sparkle so well, but like her watercolor skills are so stunning. And she has this way of like using watercolor and then stitching over it where
does she share her watercolor technique? Because that's very impeccable.
Right?
And she has these crisp lines. Like, how the heck does she do it?
I don't know if she ever does share specifically like her technique.
Well, she has a right to keep it to herself.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at the letter A. It's like a, what's it called? Like a gradient.
Yes.
But all the lines are so sharp. How the hell do you do that,
I know.
Girl?
And the thing is like if I click on any of her pieces, her stitching is so clean, or the paint is so clean. It makes it look very simple. It almost makes it look like it would be easy, which for anybody out there listening, it is not.
She probably has a magnifying glass.
She is so freaking skilled.
All the lines are so crisp.
Yes. And it tickles a part of my brain every single time. I own a couple pieces of her artwork. I own one of her Christmas ornaments. And she is based in Canada. She's just incredibly kind, so lovely of a human being. For sure, check her out. She also has her own website.
I want to see how she does it.
I know. I don't think
I want to be invasive. Show me.
I don't think she does any process of videos like that. I think she keeps it to herself.
Oh my goodness.
Which rightfully so. But yeah.
I would definitely. And
she's.
But I want to know.
Yeah.
Nevertheless.
But yeah, her stuff.
Yeah. Wow. She's amazing.
Is so beautiful. So for sure, check her out.
All right. I think that we'll have to stop here because we're running crazy on time, and we still have a lot to talk about, and we will talk about these things. We'll continue to talk about them. Not in this episode. Thank you so much for getting unstitched with us, hanging out with us today. We hope that the information that we have shared and conversation that we've had would be of some use, or at least bloody entertaining. you let us know.
And check us out on our social medias. Give us a like, a follow, review us on any of your streaming platforms if you can. That helps us with visibility. Reach out to us if you have any questions, if you want to comment on anything in this episode. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Hannah, congratulations on a full year of podcasting, even though we sucked so bad and only released 12 episodes. It's still happening. I'm glad that it's still happening, and we'll do better.
Congratulations on not having to do nearly as much work to edit now that we've decided to just move to audio.
I am extremely excited
because
about
that was such a passion project of yours that just turned into what a monster.
It was horrible.
Congratulations on all that hard work that you did, because I did zero of the editing. So shout out to you for doing all that.
And actually, I feel validated and like we have achieved something with the video, because apparently our Spotify podcast Wrapped mentioned that we were at some point, it didn't give me much details, we were at some point in the top 10% of video podcasts on the whole of Spotify platform. I know it doesn't make sense, but we'll take it.
You know what?
We'll take it.
It's a win. We don't care.
For sure. Alrighty. You guys have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. See you later. Bye.
Bye.